So here we are on night 2 of this 5-night epic journey with The Hunt. So lots of interesting comments on the first part of the video last night, so that really has motivated me to keep going. I was thinking about it today. Am I doing the right thing doing these 5 episodes each day of this week? And I think the answer is obviously yes, because you were really motivated to hear what was going to come next. But yeah, some very interesting theories in the comment section about who the hunters were, who the hunted were, and, well, let's see if you were right. Some of the most interesting theories are, well, don't want to say anything to ruin it, but I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised by the way this goes, and it is by no means over. So, here we go without further ado, and for those of you who missed last night, I put parts 1 and 2 together. So here we go with The Hunt. This is stupid, Mike said as he caught up with Fred. It's Friday night and I'm not getting laid. I'm sure your hand will forgive you, Fred snapped back, tired of his friend's incessant complaining. God, if I knew you were going to bitch this much, I'd have left you at home. Why can't you be more like Neil? Tell him, Neil. Leave me out of this. Bringing up the rear, the scrawny teenager fixed his glasses as the trio stumbled along in the dark. This part of town had once been an industrial zone bordering a housing complex. The ruins of long-abandoned buildings, their doors and windows boarded up, only added to the sense of emptiness. Now, Neil half expected to see a bum slump out of the darkness to ask for change, only to offer a knife in the throat when they refused. Hey, where are we going? Better be a whorehouse, Mike muttered. But Fred heard it loud and clear. Is that all you think about? That and your mom. Fuck you. Fred was leading the procession, the boys walking in single file along a fence laden with graffiti. Much as Mike pissed him off, Fred liked having him around for protection. The guy was built like a brick and could intimidate almost anyone. He felt safer with Mike around, though he would never admit it. Neil was the type to just go along with the group. The brains to Mike's brawn. He fit the description of a nerd to a T, especially with the binocular-sized glasses he wore. He was Mike's foil and served as a good balance to their awkward trio. Fred wasn't exactly sure what he brought to the group. Good looks, maybe? Yeah, that was it. Following the fence, they came around the corner to a street lamp that flickered so much it created a strobe lighting effect. This made their shadows wax and wane against the fence, like they were being pulled and stretched to an inhumane length before being crushed back down. Only Neil seemed to notice this as he rushed to catch up with the other two. Cold, he pulled the collar of his sweater tight around him. Do you know where you're going? Mike asked, impatient. I feel like I'm being jerked around. You'd know, Fred shot back. He expected Mike to fire back with a mom joke, but held up his hand as if signaling a squad to come to a halt. Yo! He found it. A small opening along the fence just wide enough to fit through one at a time. There was a sign, just legible, around the mouth of the opening which read, Runners Here. The fuck is this? Mike asked. Can't you read? Oh, wait, you can't. Fred nimbly dodged a smack to the head by rearing back. Wait, that's us. What the hell are we running from? Pimps? It's a game, asshole. I told you this shit already. Fred already had a leg through the gap. Now you want to play or go home? It was a bit of a squeeze, but Fred managed to get through without a splinter. The other side of the fence looked like an abandoned junkyard. Disused furniture, broken appliances, and what looked like a blow-up doll strapped to a punching bag. Hey, sexy, Fred whispered as he took a look around. Behind him, Mike struggled to put his impressive bulk through the hole while Fred stumbled in last. Fred turned to both of them. All right, listen up. Only the best players get invited to the game. So, Mike? He turned to him then. You behave, and Neil? To the other. Try to lighten up. Fixing his glasses, which had come loose while he squeezed through the gap, Neil said, I understand basic human interaction, Freddy. Mike patted Neil on the back so hard his glasses came off again. Well, yeah, but you understand girls. Neil backed off then, indignant. Look, it's a game, dumbass. Gritting his teeth, Neil fixed his glasses again and turned to Fred. The Hunt? Sounds like a fancy name for hide and seek. What are we, 4 years old? This isn't just a game, it's the real thing. Seeing he had their attention, Fred elaborated further. Yeah, it makes hide and seek look like hopscotch. Runners, that's us, participate in a race where we can win money, fame, cards, even girls. Liking the sound of that, Mike said. However, Fred went on, this used to be a housing complex before everything went belly up. They try to host these things in abandoned areas so they don't attract attention. How did you find out about it? Neil asked in his aggravatingly curious voice. Connections. Refusing to elaborate further, Fred continued. Look, I don't make the rules. I'm a player now, and so are you. He stepped toward them. Now, from what I've heard, we will be filmed at all times. That means there'll be people from all over the world watching us. Making us look like fools, making fools of ourselves, Neil said, unimpressed. I can't believe I agreed to this. Mike scoffed. And out on another night watching porn? Whoa, sucks for you. Fuck you, Mike. Everyone wants to. Easy, you guys. Fred got between them. Maybe his role in the group was as peacekeeper. Mike and Neil barely got along at the best of times, and that's when they weren't cold and staggering about in the middle of the night. Come on. We're here to have a good time. Neil, you watch streaming shows all the time, but this time, you're the star. It'll be your face everyone sees when they click play. Mike, I heard the players get real physical. You don't just run, you fight to keep from being caught. Well, you love knocking heads around, right? Will there be girls there? Well, everyone's invited. In that case, Neil began, why all the secrecy? Fred shrugged. Well, the game's, not exactly legal. Neil stepped away. Damn, I figured as much. Forget it. I don't want to wind up in jail over some stupid game. You guys are idiots. I'm going home. He turned to leave, only to have Fred block his path. You mind? Dude, we need a minimum of 3 players. It's the rules. I don't care. You only get 1 invite to the hunt. You never get called back. Well, that's on you. Look, that's not right, man. Haven't I always had your back? Even when we were kids, we were always together. Now, you did a lot of shit I wasn't cool with. By the time we snuck into the ladies' room in the mall because the men's room was out of order. Told you to go outside and piss in the trees, but you didn't listen to me. Fred tapped his own chest now. I'm the one who got caught. I'm the one whose folks got a call from security. I'm the one who was banned from going there ever again. Knowing where this was going, Neil sighed. But I wasn't. That's right. You know why? Because you didn't tell anyone I was there. Damn straight. I made such a commotion that nobody noticed you while you still had your pants down. Kept my mouth shut, didn't even tell anyone in school so you'd be embarrassed. I didn't snitch. Fred chuckled then. We know, both of us, that ain't even the worst thing I did for you, but no matter what, I always looked out for you. Now I'm asking for your help. Hey, where was I when this happened? Mike asked all of a sudden. You pissed in the girls' room. Shit, I'd have been all over that. Ignoring him, Neil said, Come on. Please, man. This is so stupid. Please. Can't believe it. All right, fine, whatever. Reaching into his back pocket, Neil pulled out a face mask. I'm going incognito. Deal? Without waiting, he pulled the mask on, covering the lower part of his face. You morons, you want your face all over the internet, but I don't. Fred clapped his hands. My boy. And he flashed Mike a wink. You still wear that shit? If the cops see this, I'll be the only one they can't accurately identify. Plus, Neil pulled up his hood. Well, gives an aura of mystery. What? Aura? Alright, means, well, you know what, never mind. Looking up, the boys spotted a large structure in the distance. A dark monolith with only a handful of lights clinging to it like fireflies. Surrounding the building was a graveyard of failed dreams. Fred only saw opportunity. Right, let's go. Walking towards the building, they spotted a large group of people in a clearing with a sign reading, "Runners Welcome," at the entrance. Each team consisted of 3 players, some wearing matching outfits or color-coding their attire. The clearing was surrounded by low-yield lamps powered by generators, at which the very center of stood a raised dais. A pair of men wearing dark clothes stood by the dais to ensure that none of the runners approached it. Others like them moved about the opening, checking equipment, answering questions, or just standing around like statues. One of the men approached Fred's group as they walked in. "Name," he said in a gravelly voice, carrying with him a pad on which several lines had been crossed out. Toadstool," Fred replied. The man looked over him once, and then at his friends, before crossing another name off the list. "Welcome to the hunt. Please remain to the side. The host will be out shortly." And that was that. And the man walked away. Fred felt someone punch him from behind. "Toadstool?" Mike said in an incredulous voice. "What the fuck is that?" "What? Do you think I'd be stupid enough to give my real names? You want to see that guy come into your home address and knocking at your door?" "Toadstool," Mike said again in utter disbelief. "What? Dumbass was already taken?" "Look, it's a reference to Mario Kart," Neil explained. "Fred used to play that game all day. He sucked." Makes us sound like potheads. Mike glanced at the other teams. There were a couple of all-girl teams, though none of the players particularly caught his eye. There was an attractive girl sitting on a guy's lap, the 2 sucking face while their third player drank from a bottle. All wore distinct red sneakers to signify their routine. Shit, I'm gonna go get a drink. Mike walked away to a makeshift concession stand, shaking his head, muttering, "Toadstool." "Fred?" Neil had his hands in his pockets trying to warm up. With his hood up and his mask on, he was unrecognizable to all save those who knew him. How many people do you think are watching us right now?" Fred looked around and took notice of the cameras that had been placed beside each of the lamps. There was one by the concession stand where Mike was ordering a drink, and if he didn't know any better, he'd say that bird on the corner of the sky was a drone. Fred only noticed it because of the moon, which was hidden behind a wall of clouds and appeared little more than a white eyelash. "I don't know, bro. Lot?" That seemed to make Neil nervous. "This stinks. It's a junkyard. It's a sham." Neil lowered his voice when one of the men in black walked by. Only when he was safely away did he dare speak again. "I feel like this is some kind of flesh market and we're the pigs." "I told you, it's just a game." "I don't know, Neil. This is just... Look, it's messing with me, alright?" Seeing his friend shifting his balance from one foot to the other was making Fred feel self-conscious. Grabbing him by the shoulders, Fred forced him down to stop fidgeting and held him in place. He looked Neil right in the face. "Look, man, I need you to get it together, okay? You losing your shit is gonna make me lose my shit, and you know that's gonna only make Mike happy. You wanna see him happy? Me neither. So, just chill." Neil remained tense, though he did stop fidgeting. Mike returned with 3 beers in hand. "Right, time to man up, ladies." After distributing the beers, Mike took one long swig before looking around. "What the fuck's up with the KGB agents?" "Probably hired security. Don't want just anyone playing the game." Neil took a swig. "Hey, thanks for the beers, man." What can I say? I'm a nice guy." Bullshit." Really, just, don't piss me off." Motioning to Neil then. "What's wrong with him?" Fred looked to Neil, who nursed his drink and kept looking around as if expecting to be attacked. "He thinks this is a sham." Well, it could be. Who the hell holds a game out in a shithole like this? So, what do you think of the competition? Mike smiled. Yeah, mostly pussies. Hippies and preps with nothing else to do on a Friday night. Chuckling, he said, "You know, I heard a team calling themselves the Justice Heroes. I mean, what the fuck are we, Comic-Con? Suddenly Toadstool ain't so bad anymore." Fuck, man, you should have asked. I'd have given us a cool name like the Crushers or Dead to Rights. You lack imagination, Mike. Mike emptied his beer. What name would you use, Neil? Fuck, it's cold. You see, now that's original. I'm not being cute, I'm seriously freezing my balls off. He took a swig. Don't they have any coffee? Yeah, right by the cappuccino machine. You're such a dick. Well, that's what your mom keeps telling me. Oh, fuck off. Look, just chill. Fred got between them again. I feel like I'm looking after a pair of kids. Could you just relax? He keeps talking shit about my mom. So talk about my mom. I don't give a fuck. Mike's face hardened at that. I don't know where that bitch is anyway, so don't bother me. Well, that comment left an awkward silence in its wake. I'm getting another drink, Mike said and walked off. He makes it really hard to like him, Neil said in a hushed voice. He's had a shitty life. Doesn't mean he has to be shitty to the rest of us. Fred opened his mouth then, but thought better of it and shut up. Sometimes it's best to leave certain things unsaid. A bit of wisdom learned through years on the streets. And it was said that you could choose your friends, but not your family. Neil and Mike were as close to family as he'd ever had, so like it or not, this was it. If they played their cards right and listened to him, maybe, just maybe, they could all come out of this a little bit better. Oh, and a whole lot richer. When Mike did return, he was in brighter spirits, a sharp contrast to when he'd left. Fred knew it was a defense mechanism in dealing with a hard life. You kept your emotions in check and your heart closed. Else anyone could walk all over you. While he hadn't known Mike as long as he had Neil, Fred knew he could trust Mike when the chips were down. They'd been in enough scraps together to know they could count on the other in a fight. Well, this was it. This was Fred's team, his family. Now, if only they'd stop fighting, they could actually formulate a plan and focus. Mike's initial assessment of the competition seemed spot on, but Fred was more scrutinizing than that. Whereas his friend only recognized strength, Fred knew that it was what you didn't know that could kill you. Looking around, he spotted members of the other teams taking in the competition just like he was. A guy in a yellow hoodie kept his head low to hide his face, but was secretly sizing up the competition. One of the members of an all-girl team was walking around, her head completely covered in a mask so only her eyes were visible. She appeared casual but was secretly assessing the other team's strengths and capabilities. Well, by the time it came for the game to start, Mike was already on his third drink. Neil was still trying to get warm, kneeling on the floor while blowing hot air into his hands, when one of the men in black walked onto the dais. "Hello. Good evening, everyone. I wish to thank you for joining us this night. You're now participants in a very special game. Let me welcome you to The Hunt." Several cheers went up at that. Mike raised his bottle, though he was half buzzed. "Show us the fucking money," he laughed. "Let's get this over with," Neil said as he stepped up beside Fred. "Not the right attitude, Neil. God, I'd kill for a coffee. Tell you what, when we win, I'll buy you a barista." The host held up his hands to call for silence. "Yes, now I know you're all eager to start, and so are your competitors." Fred blinked. Competitors? Wasn't everyone already here? He didn't see any other team show up. In fact, as far as he noticed, Toadstool was the last team to arrive. So what was this guy talking about? The host walked back and forth on the dais, like a commander addressing his troop. "First, the rules." He pointed. "See that building? The goal of the game is to reach the top and ring the bell. Yeah, you heard me. There's a silver bell on the roof. It must be rung to signify the end of the hunt. So long as one member of your team does this, the whole team wins. Now, that may sound simple enough, but be forewarned. He raised his voice, all dramatic-like. It is not. The entire course is booby-trapped. Are you shitting me? Neil said. Did I hear that right? Shh, Fred said, his attention fully piqued. You must circumvent these traps. Make your way through the junkyard and up the high-rise, which is also riddled with traps and other surprises. Well, there were a few jeers at that. A few players appeared less enthusiastic than before. But, of course, there is a catch. He paused for dramatic effect. You will be chased by an opposing team, the Hunters. It will be their task to take each one of you down by whatever means necessary. If an entire team loses its players, then that team is disqualified from the game. No exceptions. Remember, it only takes one team member to ring the bell, so even if all your friends are taken down, you can still win. So don't let that fact discourage you. Well, as for the other runners, do not let them stand in your way. When it comes to your competitors, there are no rules. Do what you have to ensure the other teams do not win. Remember, it's you three against everybody else. They will not hesitate to push, kick, or beat you if that means winning. So yes, my friends, in addition to avoiding the traps and the Hunters, you'll have to contend with the other teams. The hunt is a game unlike any other. Here, you play to win. Ah, yes. Mike cracked his knuckles. Love busting heads almost as much as I do busting nuts. Don't be gross, Mike, Neil said to the side. And the host raised his hand. This next part is very important. Once the game starts, there is no turning back. Any attempt to leave the grounds will result in immediate disqualification. He held his breath. But there are no quitters here, yes. Several no's rang out, indicating the runner's readiness to play. A few players, though, looked about as if looking for an exit. It was then Fred noticed several of the men in black appearing just on the periphery of the gathering. It was like being penned in. Fred began to wonder if perhaps the option to leave wasn't really a choice at all. Not surprisingly, he looked behind them to see the way cut off by one of the men, the same one who'd taken their name upon arrival. Oh, what the fuck? Now then. And the host slapped his hands together. Want to know what you're all playing for? More cheers rang out. The host raised his hand and one of the other fellows brought out a suitcase. Beside him, Fred could see Mike's eyes light up with excitement. Even Neil stopped shaking, seeming to just now fully appreciate their situation. The man held the suitcase up horizontally so that the host could open it up. Inside the case was nothing but green, nothing but Benjamins. $1 million, the host exclaimed. Whistles, cheers, and swears accompanied this revelation. To the victors go the spoils. Oh, fuck me. Mike bobbed up and down on his knees, appearing childlike all of a sudden. Shit, man, that's... Oh, fuck. We're going to be freaking millionaires. Neil turned to him. Well, you know, split in 3 ways, that amounts to just 333,333, right? Neil, shut up. Mike shoved Fred in the shoulder. Oh, you weren't fucking around, man. This shit is real. I'm gonna get so much pussy with that money. Is that all you ever think about? Neil snapped. Well, that and... My mom, yep, you already said that, dickhead. I was gonna say cars, but yeah, your mom too. For once, Fred was too transfixed to break them up. Even over $250,000 would be enough to change his life around. He could finally move out of his shitty apartment, go someplace nice, someplace warm. He'd never have to look back. One way or another, they were winning this thing. The host closed the suitcase and the man walked off the dais. Once the cheers had died down, he regarded each of the teams individually. That's worth playing for, eh? In a few moments, I will sound the horn to begin the game. When that happens, you will make for the building at full speed. Let nothing stand in your way. Not long after that, I will sound out a second horn, which will signal the hunters to begin. We want to make sure you have a head start. Fair warning, the hunters are dedicated. They will not stop. They will not hesitate to take you down any way they can. My advice? Run. Fuck that, Mike spoke up. Hey. The host turned to him. Does that mean I can't punch one in the face if he tries something? The host smiled. You can, try. Well, someone's gonna get knocked out, Mike bragged. I'll give you all a moment to talk strategy. The game will begin shortly. The boys turned around so that only they could hear each other. Right, listen, Fred began. Let's be smart about this. What's our strategy? Mike spoke up first. Run like hell, man. Get to the building first, up the stairs, and ring the bell. That's why the Neanderthals died out, Neil said. Got something to say, pencil dick? The jock snapped. Yeah, you're a moron. Look, most of the other teams are going to be doing one of two things, run or fight. Running across an obstacle course full of traps is bad enough. Fighting everyone along the way is suicide. No, I say we hold back. Stay behind the other teams and let them trigger the traps. When we see teams fighting each other, we either run past them or let them wear each other out before fighting whoever's left standing. Either way, we'll have less competition and reserve our strength for when we need it. Well, I knew we kept you around for a reason. Fred patted him on the head, which only annoyed him. Mike wasn't so impressed. Yeah, while we're dicking around in the back, one of the faster teams will get to the building first and ring that bell. You know what a race is? I'm not saying we just walk, stupid, but we need to pace ourselves. Neil took a look around. How about we keep behind one of the physically weaker teams? That way, if we have to fight them, our chances will be better. Fred turned to Mike. Well, shit, man, I want to fight. But do you want to be rich? We thought about it. Yeah, I do. Good. Well, there's just one problem. They both looked back to Neil. The hunters. Don't know how many of them there are or what they can do, so I'm open to suggestions. Mike had one. You heard the boss. He said we can punch them out if they try something. I don't trust him. I mean, they have to be special if they're hunting us. What threat can they be otherwise? Fred hated to admit it, but Neil made sense. Well, he sucked at math, but he knew how bad unknown variables could be. Right, then we keep our heads down, follow the other teams, fight when we have to, and try to stay away from the hunters. If one shows up, then you can punch him in the face, Mike. Nice. Okay, break. Once the teams had finished their strategy, the host spoke up again. In his hand, he held a blowhorn. Looking out at the crowd before him, his smile went from ear to ear, and it seemed predatory. All right, then. Runners, you ready? The teams let out their affirmation. Remember, first to that bell wins. Now. He held up the horn. You have a 5-minute head start. Make it count. The teams lined up by the dais, all facing the building in the distance. A few barbs were being exchanged, some downright insults, and even a couple of threats. Well, it's going to be one of those games. Mike appeared like a linebacker ready to attack the defensive line. He licked his lips in anticipation. Fred smiled. They could win this, he thought. The three of them. Team Toadstool. Funny how that name sounded less cool in his head than saying it out loud. Get ready for... The host held up the horn. The Hunt. The blowhorn was deafening, but it was soon drowned out by the hoots and hollers of the contestants as the runners burst into action. At first, they were all neck and neck, the teams moving in unison deeper into the junkyard, but as soon as space became limited, they started to split up. One team already fell into fighting, the runners exchanging blows. "Oh, man," Mike said, though he stayed the course and remained with his friends. The teams who were fighting seemed to have forgotten all about the race, throwing punches and rolling around on the floor. Mike laughed as one of them smashed another's face against a disused refrigerator. "Holy shit," Mike laughed. They put the dais behind them and plunged into the junkyard. There wasn't much light and the boys found themselves stumbling more than running. The building seemed further away than before, though it could have been a trick of the darkness. They started to bump into things, heavy things, sharp things. "Where the fuck are we going?" Mike said, waiting for the others to catch up. Neil bumped into Fred when he came to a sudden stop. "Hey, either of you brought a flashlight?" Fred shook his head to Mike's question, realizing his friend couldn't see it, and spoke up instead. "Nah." "Neil the eel?" "No, Mike. If I knew I'd been running for my life at midnight, then maybe, but I didn't." "Me without my matches," Fred said. Somewhere to the side, something heavy, metallic, struck the ground. Somebody screamed. "What was that?" "One of the traps," Neil said. "I think somebody's hurt." The scream turned into wailing. "Oh, seriously hurt." He turned to Fred with a look of concern. "I don't think this is really a game, Fred. We could get seriously hurt." "Are you gonna puss out?" O'Neill glared at Mike. "I'm serious. I wouldn't mind winning, but I don't want to lose my head while doing it." "Look, both of you just need to stay behind me. I'll win this." Mike punched his knuckles together, eager to put them to use. "Come on, let's go." And he ran off before they could stop him. "Ah, shit, come on." Fred grabbed Neil by the arm and pushed him forward. They had a solid strategy, so long as each of them played their part. Right now, the only person Fred trusted not to flake out of it was himself. Mike was too gung-ho for Valance, and Neil was just keeping it together, only barely. The race had only just started. They had a scuffle coming off to their left, where a wall of junk blocked their view. Something fell off of the top of the heap and clambered down toward them. "Hey, watch it." Fred pushed Neil out of the way as a broken window fan shattered upon hitting the ground just inches from where Neil had been. I'm bleeding." They heard someone yell on the other side. It sounded like a man whose voice went up a few octaves. "It won't stop. Oh, God. Somebody help me." "Keep moving," Fred snapped. All around them, they could hear fights breaking out, teams choosing to throw down instead of making a beeline for the building, which is what they should have been doing. Perhaps they thought taking out the competition made their chances at victory easier, not realizing fighting should be a last resort. What good is taking out the other players if you lost an eye, an arm, or a leg doing it? The last thing Fred wanted to do was waste his newfound wealth on expensive surgery. He had plans for that money. Someone collided with him, slamming his body to the ground. Fred felt the breath in his lungs leap into the air like a cat startled from its sleep. In the dark, he could see a shadow looming over him, straddling him on both sides, holding something heavy in its hands. But Neil was there before the shadow could do anything. He tackled the assailant, forcing him off Fred, buying him time that he needed to recover. Once he was back on his feet, Fred realized that the attacker wasn't alone. His teammates were right behind him, two of them cornering Mike, who was exchanging blows like a trained boxer. Fred had a choice to make. Mike looked to be holding his own and was larger than those attacking him. Neil, brave as he was already losing the fight against the other runner, who had already rolled him around so as to be on top. The runner began taking swipes, forcing Neil to cover his face. Par for the course. Fred moved forward and kicked the attacker in the back of the head. The runner fell over, groaning, allowing Neil to roll away. Fred didn't wait for the runner to get back up. Turning him over, Fred punched him once, twice, 3 times in the face. He could feel blood on his fist as he drew back, hearing the telltale sound of a broken nose. The runner went limp. "Watch him," he told Neil as he went over to help Mike. Somehow the assailants had managed to push Mike back against a wall of refuse, striking him from both sides. Fred noticed one of them had a weapon, a steel bar picked up from somewhere. He swung and narrowly missed Mike's head. "Hey!" One with the bar looked around just as Fred punched him in the face. He managed to hold on to the makeshift weapon, however, and swung blindly to keep Fred at bay. Mike charged the other guy, who seemed less enthusiastic now that it was a one-on-one. Reaching out, Fred grabbed the arm swinging the bar and punched the guy in the gut, reeling him over. A quick elbow between the shoulder blades and the back of the neck put the runner down for good. The bar clanged to the floor, and Fred kicked him a couple of times to make sure he didn't get back up. Gasping, he decided to take the metal bar. Neil walked up to him, also out of breath. "Hey, thanks. That was some tackle. Wonder why one of them didn't go after you. Probably didn't see me. I am small." You helped me out, man. Don't sell yourself short." Fred swung the bar a couple of times to get a feel for it. Comfortable, he looked to see Mike walking back to them, grumbling. "Yeah, what happened?" "A bitch ran away before I could clock him. Got me all worked up for nothing." "Hey, what's that?" "What's it look like, man?" "Hey, give it to Glasses. He needs a weapon." Fred did offer the bar to Neil, who declined. "You sure? You saw how I did. I'm not a fighter." "Oh, you ain't a lover either." "And you ran right into that ambush." Neil spat at Mike. "They were waiting for another team to run by." He looked back the way they came. If that fan hadn't slowed us down when it did, all 3 of us would have been caught by surprise. Feeling the weight of the bar, which was actually a metal beam from a large piece of furniture, Fred felt his body tense up. God, these guys are playing for keeps. So should we. Mike kicked the guy on the floor before going through his pockets. "What the hell are you doing?" Neil asked. In time, Mike pulled out a lighter and smiled. "Getting my spoils." He lit it up. "Put that out," Neil snapped. "You'll give us away." When Mike complied, Fred decided his brawny friend had the right of it and searched the guy who tackled him. Sadly, he found nothing of use in his pockets. Damn. From somewhere came a great commotion as a mountain of trash came down. Fred thought he heard someone scream but wasn't sure. Well, playing for keeps didn't cut it. "Guys," Neil began, "I'm not sure I want to do this anymore. If we leave, we're disqualified. We have to reach the end." Fred stood up. He thought he heard another team heading their way. "Right, keep to the sides. Move slowly. In fact, Mike, let me take the lead." "Why?" "I want to keep you in reserve. In case we get into a fight, I want them to see you last and piss their pants when you come out swinging. Neil, I want that brain of yours thinking. I want strategies we can use. You're the hilt. I'm the pommel. Mike is the sword, okay?" Whatever Mike said, though he didn't like being in the back. "I swear if you fall, Neil, I'm running right over you." Exasperated, Fred said, "Right, let's go." Taking the lead, Fred took them around a narrow pass that split into a fork. He stopped when he saw something on the ground. It looked like... oh, shit. A body. It was lying face down on the ground with one arm twisted at an odd angle. Fred approached it carefully, as if expecting another ambush, but his fears were unfounded as no runners sprang out at them. "Oh, fuck." He heard Neil swear. Damn, Mike swore. Damn. Is he, Neil asked. Walking over, Fred nudged the body, only to hear it moan. Still alive, but barely. Should we, Fred cut Neil off. We can't, man. I'm sorry, but we got a race to win. Shit, Fred. He needs help. Look at his arm. The guy needs a hospital. We can't help him. You mean we're not going to do anything? Fred turned around. That was you on the ground, you think he'd help? That guy back there was about to bash my face in when you came around. One of them wanted to use Mike's head as a baseball. This isn't just a race, Neil. It's life or death. But he's not dead. And the faster we win, the faster he gets help. You want him to live? Then let's find the bell and win this shit. Fred's tone indicated that the argument was over. He stepped over the poor man as if he were a little more than a hobo on the street. He knew Neil was smart, but the guy could be a bleeding heart sometimes. That's why Fred always had to protect him when they were kids. He'd get picked on all the time at school. Well, he hoped Neil would grow up quick. Moments later, they met with their first obstacle. A series of metal bars had been arranged like a cage within a large clearing. Doubling back would take too much time, and the walls around them were too high and unstable to climb, so there was no choice but forward. Fred led the way, finding the path through to be easy and simplistic, almost as if made for a child. Then the space began to narrow, and soon he was walking sideways. He was soon forced to duck his head and hunch his shoulders. Fuck this, Mike said from the back. Fred, what is this shit? Are we almost there? Neil asked. We're here, Fred said as he stumbled into the middle of the cage. The space was a box just wide enough for the three of them to fit in together. There was a hole at the opposite end from where they entered. It's like we're back in kindergarten, Neil said. You going in? Well, I can't tell you how many times I heard that, Mike joked. Oh, shut up, Mike, Fred said as he took a look inside. The hole went in for some way before veering to the right. Well, guess we're doing this. Fred ducked inside, tucking the metal bar in his shirt for safekeeping. Though tight, he managed to squirm in while moving on all fours. Holes had been dug into the tunnel so that he could just about see his way. Right, let's go, he called out behind him. There was enough room for him to look over his shoulder, and he could see his friends catching up. Once Fred turned the corner, he felt a sharp pinch in his hand, forcing him to stop. You whore, he snapped. Something crunched underneath him as he moved. His other hand was pricked as well. Neil? What? His friend's voice said from far back. Ask Mike to give me the lighter. I need to see something. After some work, Neil managed to pass the lighter forward, which meant sliding it between Fred's knees. Fred picked up the lighter and flicked it on. Oh, you gotta be. Broken glass lined the interior, stretching all the way down the tunnel. What is it? Neil asked. There's broken glass in here. What? What? Mike mimicked. As Neil relayed the information, Fred held the lighter as far out as he could. Oh, some sadistic asshole had coated the whole interior of the tunnel with glass. Guys, we have to go back. There came a loud bang that sounded like a metal hatch coming down. Fred heard Mike scream. Mike! Someone shut the fucking door. Door? What door? Fred hadn't seen a door. Hey, can we get out? He heard commotion behind him as Mike scrambled around. Then it sounded like he was kicking the door down. After several failed attempts, Mike swore like a man possessed. Damn, it's sealed shut. Fred, what kind of game is this? You could hear the tremor in Neil's voice, hear his rasped breathing. Truth be told, Fred was doing all he could to keep it together. He wasn't particularly afraid of tight spaces, but being shut inside the tunnel in the dark made him feel like he was in a coffin. Then, he heard it. "Mike, get us out of here," he managed to blurt out before the tunnel began spinning, slowly at first, but picking up speed as it went. The light bounced around as he did, and it took all the conscious effort he had left not to drop the lighter. Neil and Mike screamed and cursed, respectively, both realizing the sudden danger they were in. Suddenly, and to Fred's surprise, he saw a door slide open at the end of the tunnel. A way out. "Come on." With the tunnel spinning, it was near impossible to stay upright. Fred crawled as best he could, feeling the glass bits slice at his clothes and skin. His main concern was not to cut his face, and Fred held back a scream as his hands bled from 100 places. From time to time, his head would scrape against the sides. He felt a small bit of his ear come off and screamed bloody murder. Behind him, Mike and Neil were also being minced, yet they all urgently rushed as fast as they could through the tunnel. Fred shot out head first, rolling onto a small decline and into a pool of muddy water. He came up gasping and cursing, stumbling about in pain and surprise. Behind him, Neil splashed into the water and Mike behind him. The door slid shut and they were trapped in the waist-high pool. It extended about 20 feet down a small canal with steep walls to either side. Most shocking of all were the metal bars that hung menacingly overhead. "What's going on?" Neil cried out. Covered, his face suffered the least cuts, but his hands were bleeding from all over the place. "Oh, Christ, is this water sanitary? We could get infected." "Hey, assholes," Mike screamed at a camera which was posted along the wall behind the bars. "I want to talk to your boss. I've got a few complaints." "This isn't funny anymore, Fred. I want to go home." "Neil, we made it, didn't we? This is bullshit." "Stop screaming. You're screaming." "Hey, dickwads," Mike called to get their attention. "You hear that?" They listened. A whirring sound like something powering up drew their attention upward. Electricity coursed through the metal bars as they began to slowly descend towards the water. Fred called for them to move, but they needn't have bothered because they ran all in unison. Wading through the water stalled their progress, and they fast-waddled as best they could towards the end. Fred pulled himself out of the pool first, reaching back to grab Neil, who was nearly thrown out of the water by Mike. "Hey, Mike!" The brawny youth barely had time to pull himself out as the bars splashed into the water, sending sparks and smoke into the air. The trio collapsed sideways, realizing just how close they'd come to death. "Hey, guys," Fred said after he'd caught his breath. They both looked at him. "I think I just pissed myself." From the distance, they heard another horn go off. The hunters had entered the game. Part 2. "Right, I'm out." Neil hurried away, his skinny legs propelling him faster than usual. "This is beyond fucked up. I'm not gonna die here." "Neil?" Fred rushed to catch up with him, grabbing his friend by the shoulder. Neil shrugged him off. Even with the dim lighting, he could make out the look of unabashed fear in Neil's face. The boy's eyes were wide, his glasses trembled on his face, his mask puffed in and out like a heart pump. Even his voice, usually nasally but poised, was nearing operatic levels in pitch. "Get out of my way, Fred. I swear to God, I'm not doing this anymore. This is crazy. You're crazy. Get away." Neil backed away from Fred as if he had the plague. He almost bumped into Mike, who was lost in his own thoughts, his gaze drifting between his feuding friends and the death trap they'd narrowly escaped. "You've lost it, Fred. This isn't right. I told you I didn't want to do this. I'm going. I don't care if we're disqualified. This isn't worth it." "Fine. Go," Fred snapped. "See how long you last by yourself. It's a madhouse out there. Players will pounce on you like wolves. God, they'll eat you alive, Neil. Now you got those hunters out there. You think they'll go easy on you?" "I don't care." "Well, you should. You won't make it out on your own. They'll tear you apart. We almost died. Neil fell to his knees, his hands shaking. Seeing his hands and fingers all bloodied up, the boy ripped off his mask as it started to feel too restrictive. God, he was almost hyperventilating. Shit. Oh, shit. I don't know, man. Mike spoke up at that moment. I'm down for a fight. You know that, but this is some Saw shit right here. I'm not a fucking hamster in a maze. It's a rat in a maze, you dumb shit, Neil said, somehow retaining his banter with Mike despite all that had happened. Enough, Fred cried. They looked at him. Reaching into his pocket, Fred pulled out a handkerchief and began to rip it up, distributing the pieces to his friends. Right, bandage your hands. Come on. They did as he instructed. Once finished, he addressed them again. We have to keep going. They won't just let us out of here. What the fuck are you talking about? Mike asked. Look around you, numbnuts. The men in black, the fights, the traps. This is life or death. You think they'll just let us walk out of here after seeing what we did? Look, what's to stop us from walking to the police and telling them all about it? He winced as he tightened his bandage. It's win or die. You knew, Neil said. You knew there was no getting out of this. I have to win the money. Fred took a deep breath then. I messed up with Taxi. Mike's eyes widened. Taxi? You owe Taxi money? Neil looked between the two of them. Wait, the drug dealer? The sociopathic drug dealer. Oh, the guy's a psychopath. Well, that's two different things. Oh, Neil, I swear to... Ignoring him, Mike regarded Fred with renewed vehemence. Oh, how the fuck did you cross Taxi? I told you to stay away from him. Reaching over with his powerful arms, he grabbed Fred and shook him. Come on, man, what did you do? He asked me to be a courier. Well, the money was good, and I was tight on funds. You know my mom don't make much, but it went bad. I lost the goods. Fred grimaced. Taxi says I have 1 week to come up with the money before he takes my head and delivers it to my mom. You know he doesn't make threats. He makes promises. You motherfucker. It was a stupid mistake. I was supposed to be the dumb one. What the hell was going on in your head? Angry, Fred pushed Mike away. I needed the money, all right? Well, I always need money. Doesn't mean I get into bed with pricks like Taxi. I knew a guy who nicked his car while riding a motorcycle. Taxi had both of his legs broken. What do you think he'll do to a guy like you? You brought us here, Neil began, to help you settle a score, Fred. He looked up. God, you are a piece of shit. I'm sorry, Neil, Mike. I didn't think it could go down like this. When I learned the hunt was being hosted nearby, I thought we could win easy money. These are our streets, our house. We can do anything when we're together. Does that mean we'll die together too? Slowly Neil stood up, staring down Fred even though he was a head taller. You're not gonna die. I almost did just now. I mean, we all did. Yeah, but we didn't. Fred took a step back so he could address the two of them. It's not like you guys get nothing out of it. We can all walk away with more than $300K in our pocket before the end of the night. I can pay off Taxi. Mike can buy a car. You can go to college. We all win. If we live, Neil finalized. If we win, Fred clarified. Well, Mike was chuckling to himself. You know something, bro? If you told me this was what it was really about, I might still have gone along with it. I can deal with the fights, the traps, even Neil's bitching. Then he walked up to Fred and punched him in the guts, causing him to bowl over. But I don't like being lied to. Oh yeah, I'm a prick, but I'm an honest prick. And I don't like being used. Same here, Neil said. After all the shit we've been through, God, this is too far. Right, let's get out of here. Mike walked off, and Neil followed shortly, offering Fred a condescending look before he turned away. Fred clenched his jaw, the pain from Mike's punch still reverberating throughout his body. He knew he'd fucked up, but that was that. He'd make it up to them, he knew, but later. Right now, they had a game to win. Well, they encountered their first hunter not long after. They moved in silence toward the building, now focused and completely alert. Fred's revelation created a schism between their group, and even Mike and Neil stopped exchanging insults. It's as if they suddenly realized just how desperate their situation was, and stopped treating it like a game. In time, they crossed paths with another team who, for some godforsaken reason, had chosen to wear bright red shirts for the event. Mike ambushed the first one he saw and body slammed him into the hardest thing he could find. Fred took out his metal bar and fenced with the other, who had picked up a loose board as a weapon. The board was heavier, but that made him slower. Biding his time, Fred waited for an opening and took advantage, putting the runner down once and for all. The last runner had been wounded already and had the misfortune of dealing with Neil. He tore into the player as if he were responsible for all of this. Punching the guy right in the nose, Neil wailed on him as he squirmed on the ground, holding his hands up in meager defense. Fred had to pull him before he killed the poor guy. Looking into his eyes, Fred feared if that's what he'd intended to do. There was a coldness in Neil. Fred wondered whose face Neil envisioned when he was bashing the guy's face in. Ah, good, he thought. Let him use that anger. They needed to go all out if they intended to survive. In another clearing, they spotted something that stopped them dead in their tracks. Several merry-go-rounds had been set up to serve as obstacles. They were all spinning at the same time, only each rail having a saw attached to them to create spinning blades of death. Oh, fuck me, Mike said. At the very center of the deadly cyclone was a wounded woman. She was bleeding profusely from her back and pounding like a wounded dog. They could hear her whimpering over the sounds of the blades. Doesn't make sense, Neil said. Mike scoffed. Bitch forgot to duck is all. That's just it. Those blades are easy to avoid. You just need to crawl under them. How the hell then did she get cut? Why don't we ask? Fred was moving before he could respond. Neil's assessment proved correct, and he managed to crawl beneath the blades with ease. The whistling sound they emitted was unnerving. He could only imagine how sharp those edges were. By the time he reached the center, the girl was still unaware of his presence. Upon closer inspection, he noticed she had not one, but 3 deep gashes across her back. Those didn't even look like blade cuts. Hey, Startled, she turned and held up a broken bottle as a weapon. Her eyes were wide and she had blood across her face. Stay back. Oh, easy. Fred held up his hands. I just want to get by you. Where's your team? Tears filled her eyes. They're dead. He killed them. Her whole body was trembling. Her arms acted as if the bottle was suddenly too heavy to hold. He tore into them like an animal. He? Fred said. Mike and Neil had crawled through right then. Where is he? I ran away. I tried to get away, but he clawed me. I could feel his fingers in my back. God, he wasn't human. Who's she talking about? Mike asked. The hunter, she said. He ate my team. Oh. Shit. As if things weren't bad enough, Fred turned to the others then. Looks like we got cannibals. Hey, where'd you last see him? Mike asked the frightened woman. She was about to respond when she froze. Trembling, she raised a shaky finger behind them, back the way they'd came. They slowly turned, spotting a large, hulking man on the outside of the spinning blades. He was naked with thin, rippling muscles and walked as if in pain. His skin was covered in blood and he was hunched over. Even then they could see he was tall, even taller than Mike. What's worse were his eyes. They were a hateful yellow, and he was looking right at them. "What?" Fred began. Neil continued. "Fuck," Mike finished. The man was bald, and as he approached, they realized that he had marks all over his head. It looked like he scraped his nails all over his skin. Those same marks covered his chest, arms, and legs. He was grunting profusely, like every step took effort. It pained him in some fashion. Jerking back and forth, he stopped just short of the first cutting blade. Only when the metal sliced a piece of skin off of him did he open his mouth. An unearthly growl escaped his crooked yellow teeth, a combination of exquisite pain mixed with unbridled anger. Before their very eyes, he ducked and ran on all fours, his head narrowly missing one of the spinning blades. Like an animal he moved, all instinct, as if it was simply natural to him. "Fred!" Neil cried out as he was the closest to the blades. Hearing his voice had snapped Fred out of his trance, and he reacted just as the insane man leaped the last few feet toward him. Grabbing his leg, the man pulled Fred toward him. His strength was such that Fred felt like a child in comparison. Reaching in his shirt, he pulled out the metal bar and began smashing into the man's hand, breaking a couple of fingers. Still, he did not relent. "Oh, fuck." The girl, despite her wounds, got up and ran away. She didn't get far, for in her haste to escape, she ran into one of the blades. It cleaved her nearly in two, the upper half slicing off like a puzzle piece. Blood sprayed in the air, coating Neil. He screamed louder than he ever had in his life. Meanwhile, Fred was fighting for his life. He kicked at the man's face, caving his nose inward and sending out spurts of blood. But still the man pulled, desperate to get at the meat. "Help me," he screamed. "Jesus, what the hell are you standing around for?" The man pulled Fred until he was right on top of him. At that moment, the youth did the only thing he could think of and jammed the bar into the man's shoulder. Blood spilled out of the wound, and the man howled. Yet he still pressed on. Even when Fred pushed the bar in inch by inch, it did nothing to deter the maniac. Suddenly a shadow appeared overhead, and Mike, grasping the upper half of what was once the young woman, slammed the gory projectile into the man's face. The heavier blow seemed to do the trick, and he fell off Fred. The cannibal's back was sliced open by one of the blades. The sound he made. "Come on," Mike said, grabbing Fred as he did so. They followed Neil, who'd already crawled beneath the other blades to escape to the other side, scurrying like frightened insects. Neil kept screaming at them to hurry up. They struggled to their feet, gasping as if just coming up for air. A frightening noise caused the trio to look back. It wasn't the injury that spurned the feral man to scream, but something else, a more ancient pain. He began to tear off his own skin, pulling bits at first and then chunks. Soon his muscles were exposed as his claws. Wait, did he always have claws? The terrible sharp fingers which he used to cut himself were now incredibly long, lethally deadly appendages. Before their very eyes, he seemed to grow with each slice, getting taller, and his arms extended. His bones popped and twisted, his knees bent the other way, his face elongated, mouth twisted into a snout as his cranium became less human and more canine. By the time the transformation ended, the man they thought was a cannibal was now a monstrous half-man, half-beast thing. His skin was still hairless, yet revealed exposed muscle and tissue. His torso had thinned so that the muscle mass could be moved to his outer extremities, providing longer limbs. His ears had elongated as well, now resembling knives with full range of movement. About the only thing that hadn't changed were his eyes, still that angry yellow. Now on all fours, the monster reared back its large head and let out a howl of anguish. He sniffed the air. His gaze fell on the cadaver of the young woman and, without the slightest hesitation, began to feast on the remains. Fred felt like vomiting. "Come on." Mike grabbed his teammates, almost pulling them off their feet. There was no hiding the fear in his voice. I said, "Come on, move," he screamed. They flared into the darkness as the creature feasted. All around the junkyard, more howls filled the air. "What the hell was that?" Mike asked, when they'd finally put enough distance between themselves and the creature. They were hunched over and struggling to catch their breath. Neil had fallen to his knees and began to hurl all over the ground, his back lurching. Fred followed suit, though he stayed on his feet. Mike began pulling at his hair. "Did you see that? I mean, I'm not crazy, right? Oh, holy shit. This whole game is fucked up." "Mike," Fred snapped once he'd gotten a hold of his innards. "Just chill out." "Chill out? You want me to chill out? Well, okay, fearless leader, I'll chill out." Mike stepped up to him, pointing in the direction they'd come from. "You want to tell me what the hell just happened? Because I don't fucking know. Maybe you do since you know everything." Fred stood up. "What the hell's that supposed to mean?" "I don't know, Freddy boy. Explain this to me." "Mike, I don't know what that was. Why in the God's golden balls do you think I'd understand any of that?" "Because you brought us here." Mike was almost spitting in his face. Never had Fred seen his friend so uptight. Who could blame him? "Is it worth it? You need money so bad that you had to take a job from Taxi, screw it up, and then screw up both our lives because you couldn't hack it?" "Fuck you, Mike." "Yeah?" Mike pushed him. "Go ahead, tough guy, come at me." Fred almost did. Right now, there was nothing he wanted to do more than break Mike's nose, smash his face, cut up his... Well, it was like he'd just snapped out of a trance. Suddenly, it all became clear. Werewolves. What? We just saw a frickin' werewolf. Mike's jaw went slack. He took a step forward, grabbing Fred by the collar and threatened, "I'm gonna punch you, man. I'm gonna just fucking punch you and Stop it." Neil looked up, bile dripping from his face. He wiped his chin as he slowly got up. "Don't be stupid, Mike. At least not more than you already are. You were there, you saw it. You watched the movies." Then to Fred, "Well, he's right. Are you too high?" Letting Fred go, Mike looked between them, his chest rising and falling as if breathing became a chore. Finally he said, "'Cause if you are, can you give me a hit? 'Cause I'm losing it." "The hunt," Fred said. "They are the hunters. We are the hunted. Tell me you didn't know this before you signed our death warrants. Tell me, Fred." Looking at Neil, Fred shook his head. "It's supposed to be a race. Just teams of 3 competing for a cash prize. That's what they told me." "And you believed them?" "How was I supposed to believe, Neil? You think if they told me I'd be hunted by werewolves that I'd have taken them seriously? I'd have laughed, and so would you." Fred raised his head as a howl filled the air. They were screaming in the distance. No doubt one of the hunters had found its prey. "I knew we could win. The 3 of us, we can win anything, but werewolves, how the fuck was I supposed to know?" "Well, I quit," Mike said. "I didn't sign up for some bullshit Halloween special." He began to walk away, but Fred chased after him. "Mike." "I don't care if I'm disqualified. I'm out of here." A sound stopped them in their tracks then. They'd fled down a path between 2 walls of junk. From down the way came the sound of something heavy falling. few seconds later, a long snout appeared around the corner. It was followed by an elongated head devoid of all hair but glistening with exposed muscle. The creature sniffed the air as if discerning something. Finally, those fierce yellow eyes focused on them. "Oh, fuck," was all Mike said before it revealed its sharp teeth. "Run." The trio fled as fast as their legs could carry them, the beast snapping its jaw as it gave chase. It moved paradoxically, like a creature both accustomed and estranged to being on all fours. Its arms were longer than its legs, almost twice the length, giving it a gait akin to that of a primate. Even with this odd movement, it still ate up ground very fast and was catching up with them. Their best chance at losing it came when it broke out of the junkyard toward a quartered-off fence. It marked the boundary between the building and the rest of the playing field. Beyond it lay a parking lot with empty cars. The fence was tall, and there was barbed wire at the top. Near the far end was a gate used for entry. They made a rush for the door. With their long legs, Fred and Mike surpassed Neil, who was struggling to keep up. "Wait," he cried. "Don't let it get me." He dared to look over his shoulder and wished he hadn't. The werewolf had zeroed in on him, like a predator in the wild, and it had focused on the weakest member of the herd, closing in for the kill. Neil felt a hand grab his collar. Fred practically pulled him the rest of the way, throwing him through the door. Mike slammed the door shut just as the beast plowed into it, sending him sprawling back. The lock had snapped shut and held, but only just. The beast growled and snapped its jaws at them, seemingly intent on forcing the door open. Fred and Neil pulled Mike to his feet, staring dumbfounded at the creature's tenacity. "That's not going to hold," Neil said. "Thank you, Captain Obvious. Right, let's move." Taking the reins, Fred led them into the lot. The beast's growls of frustration followed them. "Hey, do you know where we're going?" Mike asked. Fred didn't have a clue. "Inside the building. We're going to ring that bell, win the game, and get the hell out of here. Does that sound like a plan?" "Didn't you hear me? I said I'm done with this." "You want to go on your own? Go. Those things will pick you off before you get halfway to the exit. If not them, then something else. The only way out is winning." God, he's lost his shit, Neil. Neil had to agree. "This isn't worth it, man. We have to go before... Then Fred just snapped. Then... He slipped, the back of his head colliding against the concrete. A shooting pain blinded him for several moments, and even his friends' voices sounded muffled. "Is he dead?" Mike asked. Ignoring him, Neil waved his hand in front of Fred's face. "Come on, Fred. We can't stay here." "What happened?" "You broke your ass, man." Mike looked around nervously. "Listen, we better get going." "You slipped," Neil said as he tried to help Fred up. A sudden pause caused him to loosen his grip on Fred's hand. He fell back to the ground, into something warm. Fred held up his hand to see the digits covered in blood. He'd slipped on the puddle when walking by. God, there was so much of it that it coated much of the car they were next to. Looking up, Fred followed the trail of blood beneath the car. The carcass on the other side of the car was missing its jaw. Only the upper half remained. Everything below the neck had been torn and picked at. Oh, the beast wasn't finished. It was still feasting, taking out chunks of flesh. It paused when it noticed it was being watched. Fred's eyes widened. Scrambling up, he and the others saw a large lupine form rear up on the other side. It swallowed whatever it had in its mouth whole. Then looking right at them, the werewolf bared its teeth in a morbid attempt at a smile. They ran. you know what? Some of you did suggest that they thought the hunters would be werewolves. How on earth did you guess that from the first episode? Well, you know what? You were right. Things are really starting to ramp up in this story. It's just getting going still, though. 3 more episodes, about another hour and a half at least of storytelling from yours truly. So I hope you are going to join me again tomorrow night and for the rest of the week. This one really is fantastic, and I'm enjoying reading it. And from the comments you left last night, I think you're enjoying listening to it as much, which is always very satisfying for me. So that's it for this evening, but I will be back again tomorrow night for episode 3. Till then, my dear friends, you all sleep well, okay? Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. It really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or 2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.